hence why I'm sitting in the same building you are, Kristen, but slightly different ends. And I ironically, even more first world problems, I'm sitting underneath an AC unit and am freezing. So talk about wah, it's 95
Yeah,
degrees and
yeah,
humid and muggy outside in Indiana, and yet I'm sitting here complaining about how it's cold.
yeah,
So that's
yeah.
okay. So great to see you guys. I'm Coach Woody. With me, as always, is Kristen Wrinkle. Kristen, super excited to have you, and I can't wait. I know we have some phenomenal questions from our viewers today, so I'm looking forward to hopping into them.
Very excited. Yes. What horrible timing to have your AC break when it's
Right?
like
Yeah.
high of
Well,
90s. Yeah.
break is a strong word. Not planned for. So I when I built the podcast studio, it's in the inside of my barn.
Hmm.
So it's a room within a metal box, right? So
Hmm.
I was like, maybe I won't need AC, and then we've hit these 100-degree weather days, and so the little tiny box AC unit that I bought was not sufficient to cool the space. So we're upgrading here momentarily. But yes, an unfortunate circumstance.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's
Yeah.
okay. So, Kristen, tell the listeners a little bit about some of the topics that we have today.
Yeah, a lot of questions are surrounding like the mindset of high achievers
Mm-hmm.
and a couple of questions about discipline and fitness and self-worth when it comes to facing adversity or just insecurities in general. So pretty
I love
broad,
that.
but
I love
lots
that.
of great questions. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Things I'm really excited to talk about. So, just for the listeners who maybe haven't hopped on before or haven't been a part of the AMA show, a couple things. One, we have a form so that if you want to talk to a coach and hear about the questions that you have, then please let us know. It'll be in the show notes for this show itself. We throw it up on Instagram and LinkedIn all the time. So make sure that you're taking a look at that. But if you want to ask a question or just ask on LinkedIn, on Instagram, and we'll be happy to answer them during these AMA shows. Why ask the questions? Because I don't know about you, but a lot of times people don't want to spend thousands of dollars on coaching, but they just want a little advice, right? So the reason I love this format is because I love those old school radio talk shows. I wish those things were still a thing, but now it gets way too easy to like pigeonhole yourself into like one thing. Back in the day, you had like four radio channels, right? So you had to listen to one of them, and one of them would have the Ask Me Anything radio show. And I love that concept because sometimes people just need a little guidance. And so looking for ways to give back with the 15 years of a coaching experience that I had. And so we started this. So for those of you who are just listening for the first time, welcome. This is what this is all about. Taking the opportunity to ask questions from somebody who has some experience in human performance, mindset, leadership, culture, to be able to weigh in and help you out. So super excited at this. So let's hop in with the first question, Kristen.
Yeah, absolutely. First question is from Ty. He's a high achieving student and has always felt that being successful was an expectation and not worth celebrating rather than something to be proud of. So, Ty's question is, how do I change my mindset so that accomplishments actually feel like accomplishments rather than expectations? And how do I allow myself to celebrate these accomplishments rather than immediately focusing on what needs to be done next? And I am listening very intently as well.
As are most high achievers. Yes. So I appreciate the question, Ty. That's a phenomenal one. Something that we struggle with a lot as high achievers, right? Because the sheer act of achieving is something that we love. We can become addicted to in a lot of different realms. We're always constantly wanting to do the thing. And the challenge becomes, and what Ty's alluding to here, is this idea of what Arthur Brooks from Harvard talks about as being the hedonic treadmill, right? So you're always constantly striving to do something because you're enjoying or appreciating that pursuit, right? But the challenges become when the pursuit no longer is fulfilling because you're not appreciating what comes from it. So there's a couple different things you might want to consider here, Ty, when you're thinking about how you approach this issue. One is knowing yourself is a extremely valid process to better understand what motivates you and what you appreciate. Because until you know what that truly is, it's really hard for you to lean into something like being satisfied with what you're trying to accomplish. I'll give you a really good example. I love taking vacations, and for a number of years, I struggle with the concept of vacations because my perception was you go on vacation and you relax and you do nothing and you lay there and you just rest. And the problem that I was having is I would get to the vacation, having been so excited for the thought of being on vacation. Then I would get there and I'd be like, oh, okay, now I'm on vacation, but I'm not relaxed. I'm not resting. I'm not enjoying this at all. And so there was just this turmoil within me, and usually some friction within my family because we all had different ideas of what success looked like. And so ultimately we would leave vacation and I would feel pretty let down, right? And I know that's a little ungrateful of me, but because I didn't know myself, I didn't recognize this idea that I always want to be feeling accomplished. And so one of the first things I had to do was recognize that it's okay to have a desire to want to achieve things. That's first and foremost. There's nothing that says that you can't want to achieve something, and you have to believe that. Right now, what that looks like is different for everybody. And so you have to recognize, especially in our society where people are constantly comparing ourselves with other people, other people are going to look at you and go, you work too hard, you strive too much, you're doing too much, blah, blah, blah. And you just have to say, this is just who I am. So knowing what matters to you is really, really important. Because then once you know that thing that you're doing, for instance, let's take, for instance, studying, like for Ty, right? And getting good grades. Once you know that matters to you, and maybe it's not the good grades, maybe it's the thing that the good grades allow for you for, or maybe it's just being able to say you are a hard worker, then what you can do is start to reframe what it is that you're actually trying to accomplish. Are you trying to accomplish the A, which ultimately, in the big scheme of things, sorry to say this to all the students out there, including the ones that I serve, but the piece of paper with the A on it doesn't matter. In fact, when students ask me, I'm not sure what I want to do with my life at the end of 4 years of college, I tell them, don't worry about it. Get the piece of paper, because what does that piece of paper do? It tells people that you're disciplined enough to go through 4 years of trying to accomplish something. And it's that very desire for accomplishment and that willingness to do hard things that is going to allow you to feel that satisfaction. Then the only thing that's left is to reflect on that on a regular basis, right? To remind yourself, right? These last couple of weeks for myself personally have been pretty hard. So today I was in my cold plunge, and as I was sitting in my cold plunge, my mantra to myself was, I'm willing to do hard things. I'm willing to do hard things. Just to remind myself that that is the act, the willingness to do hard things. And in that can breed that confidence to want to do more. So Ty, what I say to you is focus on what really matters to you. And if being a hard worker is what matters to you, then focus on the fact that when you do hard things, you are succeeding. And then you do have to take a moment to reflect on those things and appreciate them. And everybody celebrates in a different way. It doesn't, you don't buy yourself a $300 watch every time you you finish a paper. That the reward does not align with the act, but you do have to take a moment to celebrate those things and find the way that you can celebrate for yourself, whether that's some sort of small gift to yourself or it's some sort of affirmation to somebody, telling the story to somebody else that you love so that they can tell you, hey, great job, right? And there's nothing wrong with wanting that acknowledgement. We're a social species. When somebody else tells you you've done a great job, we appreciate that. That is a reward in and of itself, and that's perfectly fine. So those would be my 2 cents, Ty, on how I might approach this idea that I'm not able to celebrate successes and small wins. Is know who you are and what matters to you without comparison to others. Focus on the fact that you do hard things, and that's the reward in and of itself, not the outcome that comes from it, but the act of being able to do those things. And then do celebrate small successes in some way that is meaningful to you, whether that's getting affirmations from people you love, not people you don't care about, or small gifts or whatever it happens to be.
Is there a way to identify what is a small success? Because I will tell myself I need to celebrate more small wins, but a small win to somebody else might just mean kind of like what Ty was saying, just an expectation. It's just like another step towards a bigger goal.
Mhm.
So is there any way you can kind of like intentionally break down how to identify what a small win would be so that you can actually consciously be like, yes, I need to celebrate this. I need to go get myself coffee or something,
Yeah.
that's so
Yeah.
it's not just like, oh, skip right over it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I appreciate that add on there, Kristen. Phenomenal question. So I think in my world, the world that I live in, where we're working on ourselves and our well being, because that's kind of a piece of this, right? There are 8 different areas that I talk about people being able to better themselves, right? And so we've talked about this before, but I'm going to just rehash it here just a little bit. It's physical, spiritual, mental. So those are the 3 internals. There's social, vocational, and material, right? So who I'm with, what I do, and what I have, right? And then there's the 2 that kind of fit into both categories. One is spatial, right? So the area that I surround myself with to improve my ability to serve myself and the people that I love. And that's both physical space and also mental space. And then there's directional. Do I know my purpose in life, and do I know the values that I live by in order to fulfill that purpose, right? So there's the 8 areas that you can improve your life. Okay. And in my opinion, anything that you might bring up to me, I'm going to put it into one of those 8 categories. And so my ability to identify a success depends on entirely on, is this act that I'm doing improving my capacity or my position in one of those 8 things. So for instance, an easy one is working out, right? If I work out, I'm improving my physical well-being. That's a win, right? That is something worth celebrating. Now, the other capacity for that question is, because Kristen, you work out, but when you work out, it could be one of 2 things. You could think of it as a job that I just have to do, right? Which is, again, is a perception. Or you might look at it as it's something that I enjoy doing anyway, so it is a reward in and of itself. If it's the second thing, you've already won. The celebration is working out. The celebration is playing pickleball for me, right? Now, you have to have the mindset to believe that it's a celebration. And so you can remind yourself once in a while, like sometimes I'll be on the pickleball court and I'll just remind myself, dude, I'm playing pickleball right now. I could be anywhere else in the world, but I'm doing something that I love to do. That's great. And again, you have to believe that. And that's a mindset shift. It's a lot of gratitude, really. The other one is which is like it's a job. I have to do it. Well, then it becomes, okay, is it somewhat challenging? For some of my clients, physical health is what we work on. That's the challenge. The challenge is, am I doing something for my health? I have a client right now whose literal goal is they when we were talking about liquid calories are one of the worst things that we can consume because it's so easy and it's so fastly digested and it kills our insulin, right? So many things. So his only goal right now is 3 days a week, reduce, take away a pop and replace it with black coffee, right? Because he enjoys coffee. So, increasing caffeine drastically, not the ultimate goal, but replacing the habit with a slightly worse habit or slightly less worse habit is a goal, right? So here's the thing. He's already lost in about a week and a half, 2 weeks, about 5 pounds, right? Absolutely. Now, you, Kristen, might go, oh, yeah, I stopped drinking pop, whoop-de-doo. Like, I know pop's bad for me, blah, blah, blah. That's not a win for you because it's not a challenge. You haven't accomplished something, because accomplishing something would mean you've strived for something and came to a beneficial outcome, right? So the other piece of this is if it's something that comes easy to you that you already enjoy, then you can't in good consciousness celebrate that because it's easy and you wanted to do it anyways, right? But typically things that are easy that we want to do anyways also don't benefit those 8 areas of our well-being. For instance, another thing would be saving money, right? So for your material well-being, some people spend way too much money. I'm not pointing fingers, but at myself, right? So sometimes a win is being able to recognize when you do something like, I didn't spend any money today on anything that was frivolous, right? That's a win. You got to be able to see it. You got to be able to visualize it. So sometimes the trick is making visible your activity, whatever that could be. So it's the number of hours that you've studied. Anytime you notice these apps that people are putting out for benefiting habits, you'll notice that they gamify it, and then they make it visible, right? Like, you did this number of many hours of blah 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 blah, and it's that external accountability and validation that can be really beneficial for people. And so, to answer your add-on to Ty's question, which is, how do you recognize the things that are small wins? I would say this: does it benefit one of those 8 areas of your life? Yes or no? And then if it does, was it something that improved, that was somewhat of a challenge for you? The bigger the challenge, the bigger the reward. And sometimes, again, if it's a long-term effort, you may have to delay the reward. So you have to have visuals. So a really silly one that I used to do with my clients is take a jar. Every time you do something that benefits your well-being, your health, whatever, your material wellness, your relationships, whatever, put a marble in the jar. When the jar fills up, reward yourself with something larger. So that way, instead of buying a coffee every time you do a paper, it's, I'm going to, buy myself a new set of golf clubs at the end of the year because I blah, blah, blah. Right. So that can also be really helpful, is to recognize those small wins and then gather them into some sort of visual representation that allows you to give yourself a more motivational reward as a result of your hard work.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. Noted.
Yeah. Great question. Great question.
Yeah, thank you. Got a question from Michael. You work with a lot of high achievers. So Michael's wondering, what patterns do you see that most people don't realize are common? What's a blind spot that consistently shows up in your coaching conversations with successful people?
Yeah, I love that. Great question, Michael. Great question. That actually alludes really well to a little bit of a teaser I threw out on LinkedIn the other day, which was, I was having a conversation with this gentleman the other day, and we got to talk about what we do, as one does. And I told him that I coach high achievers. And he had mentioned at some point that his son was wanting to be a Navy SEAL, right? Because I mentioned something about like, oh, he might, because they were talking about he was in middle school or maybe early high school. And, I kind of mentioned that idea of like, oh, probably wants to be in, some sort of professional athlete, because that's where a lot of people for a number of years wanted to put themselves. And he said, no, he wants to be a Navy SEAL, right? And that in my back of my mind was just like, oh, okay, just the pinnacle of performance, but in a different field is really what that boils down to. Instead of basketballs and hockey sticks, they have hand grenades and guns, right? High performance, and the stakes are a little higher for Navy SEALs, right? But
even higher performance.
Exactly, right? So the sentiment is still the same, which is they want to be at the pinnacle of their performance. Mm-hmm. So he mentioned to me, oh, okay, well, tell me a little bit more about what you like. Actually, a specific question was, what's a common theme, or what's something you see similar to all of these people that are high performers and high achievers? So it alludes really well to Michael's question. And I would say it's this: most people don't realize that the most powerful motivator for high achievers that are truly sustainably doing what they do well is that they do it in the service of others. One of my qualifications for working with people is they're servant-hearted. And there's 2 reasons for that. One, I believe that the things that we do and the energy that we put out should be for the benefit of others in some way, even if it's for the benefit of the environment, which then therefore translates and correlates to helping people, right? But it should be benefiting in some way to something other than yourself. So one, I just believe that to be in my heart. But 2, the other reason is because when I can tell somebody does something for someone else, they're in the service of somebody else, I know that those people are going to continue to work hard even when things get hard, because they are not going to give up. And a really good case in point is Navy SEALs. When you're a Navy SEAL, the best of the best, they don't talk about how they're out there doing it for the glory of themselves. They're doing it to protect the guy and the gal right next to him. And so when I can see somebody who is servant hearted, meaning they do what they do for the service of others, whether that's their family or that's the community that they live in, that's the team that they've built, or it's their grandma, right? Whoever it is, that those are the people that I know are going to keep working hard even when things get hard. Really good case in point, EMTs, teachers, right? The people who their job is service, they do a lot of hard stuff for little to no reward. And so it is those people that I know are going to be high achievers. And that's the common theme that I see in the best of the best of the best. Don't get me wrong, there are people out there that are high achievers who don't care about anybody but themselves. But A, they're probably going to give up faster. B, they're not going to contribute meaningfully to the world. And so C, they're going to end up in a very, very lonely place in life. And as most of the people who listen to this show know, based off of a lot of research on human happiness, the thing that we remember most are the people that we have in our lives, not the things that we did and didn't do. So that would be the thing that I have seen as a very common theme, and the one that I look for in the people that I work with and then the people that I serve. So one of the challenges that I would see in a lot of the high achievers, there's probably two of them. And well, there are a lot of them, right? But two that stick out. One is the shouldering of all the things that they feel they should be controlling, and they can't. And don't get me wrong, I'm in that boat. I'm a high achiever as well. This is why I do what I do, to serve other people who are like me. And so they shoulder so many things that are just not at all within their control, and yet something has made them believe that it is their responsibility to shoulder those things. And so that would be one of the things that I think a lot of high achievers struggle with, which my goal with that is to kind of unpack that. A lot of times high achievers, at least the ones that I work with, they don't need more on their plate. They don't need more stuff to do. They don't need more responsibility. They need a lot less, because once they lower that burden, they have more capacity to do the things that they are really gifted and driven to do. I use the analogy a lot of climbing a mountain, right? Like, imagine how we spend our entire lives accruing all these different tools and resources, the pickaxes and the crampons and the meals ready to eat, and all these different tools and things that we have available to us. Over time, that gets really, really heavy, and it may also not serve us anymore. And so taking on that responsibility and increasing that burden is one of those things. And so one of my jobs as a coach is to help them unpack all the things they should be responsible for and are in control of, and letting go of the things that they are not responsible and not in control of. And so that would probably be one of the bigger ones that I see a lot of people struggling with. And in conjunction with that is the piece of not asking for help, to be perfectly frank. I mean, that not only do we shoulder the responsibility, but when it comes time where we can no longer hold on to that, and we just can't manage the load anymore, we have a really, really hard time with asking for either advice or for support, or just to unload a little bit. And so that's another one that kind of goes hand in hand, because we shoulder all the responsibility, and then we have a really, really hard time of asking for help and advice.
It's good to think about. And even if you don't think that that is a blind spot you have, I feel like it's important to really think, is it or is it not? Because that's the whole reason why it would be a blind spot, is because you don't think that it applies to you,
Yes, that's the catch-22. It's the unfortunate, you hit it the nail on the head, Kristen, right? Like, when you are so blinded, and I do not mean that in a derogatory way, but just like you have the blinders on, right? Because that's just the way that you're wired and you're built, right? like the sheer inability to recognize that you need help and that it's not your control and not your responsibility is the thing that keeps you from being able to, right? Because your wirement is, okay, well, there's a problem, it's obviously something I need to take care of. And so it can be really hard to identify that. And so the unfortunate circumstances, people don't typically come to me unless they're burning, right? Like until it's bad. And so, and by that point, sometimes it's really, really hard to even talk about trying to get help. Instead of it just being a small problem, it just gets burdened more and more and more. And so, yeah, you're absolutely right. That can be a challenge. And so the first thing is to you just to take stock. Are the stories I'm telling myself true? Like, is this really the way that it has to be? And typically it is not. So I'm always imploring the people that I work with and the people that listen to ask that question, like what do I have, like just stopping for a moment, which is really hard for high achievers, just stopping for a moment and asking yourself, what am I currently worried about right now that if I could get some help wouldn't be as big of a burden anymore? Like what is it, like what is happening right now? And then just starting to look for resources that can benefit, that can help, that can move the needle forward again in one of those, in my opinion, one of those 8 areas of our lives.
Or ask other people what they think your blind spots are. Like I've asked you that countless times, and I'm going to ask you that again, the more we talk, because
Sure.
yeah, so I feel like asking somebody who knows you and knows how you work and what you do, identifying what their blind spots are. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's a really good point. I couldn't agree more. The other thing too is to recognize like who's a good person to ask, right? Because you mentioned people that know you. Obviously, you want to lean into people that love you, but you also have to realize that people that love you have their own biases. Either they're not going to tell you things that you need to hear, they're going to tell you things that you want to hear, or they're not going to be able to see the forest from the trees because they're so close to it. And so, and another thing, which is one of the problems I have, is when I talk to the people that I love, I don't want to burden them because I love them, and so I don't want them to have to deal with my stuff. And so the other thing to think about is here is like it's finding that really, really specific space where they know you well enough to care and to see, but not but also they care enough and see enough that they want to help you and they want to pour into you and they want to tell you the things that maybe you don't want to hear, but that will benefit you in some way, while also keeping you on the right path, the things that you want. And so that's another reason why one of the first things I do with my clients is we talk about purpose and values, because it can be really easy to get pulled off in a million different directions by people because they say, well, what you really need to do is you need to work out more. Well, what you really need to do is get more knowledgeable in money. What you really need to, it's like you can get pulled in so many different directions. So that's why it's important to know yourself, and then to also find those people in that very unique space where they can pour into you, knowing who you are and what you want out of life without being so close that they have a really hard time being unbiased.
Mhm. Yeah.
Love it.
Anonymous question. What do
Anonymous.
you do when you have had discipline in the past, but for whatever reason, for example, life, kids, business, etc., you've lost that discipline? How do you get it back?
Yeah, yeah, that's a phenomenal question.
Mhm.
So how do we find the discipline that we used to have when we get derailed?
That's something I'm scared of, like I am disciplined in my life right now, and
Sure.
I'm worried about, if I take too long of a break, I'll lose the discipline. If I start a new career, and I have to switch gears on some things, I'll lose the discipline. And yeah, how do you get it back?
Yeah, yeah, I love that. So, it's funny. I imagine these two things, right? These two scenarios. One of them is a wooden beam, right, sticking out of the ground, and it's just sticking straight up, and it's getting bombarded with gusts, right? Wind, just power, just boom, just nailed with it, right? The wooden beam is strong. It's not going to move very much. It's what you would call disciplined, right? It's sturdy. Nothing can shake it, right? But we all know that when the wind gets strong enough, that wooden beam is going to snap in too. Then you imagine in the same scenario a tree right next to the beam, right? That tree is going to be all over the place, right? It's going to be swaying in the wind. It's going to be bending. It's going to be swaying. It's going to be challenged in so many different ways. But the tree's not going to break. The tree isn't necessarily disciplined. It'll sway and move with the wind, but it is resilient. And so when I think of what we're talking about here, which is this idea of I was disciplined in the past, I'm no longer disciplined, what do I do? That is no longer, in my opinion, a discussion of discipline. That's a discussion of resilience. And resilience is the ability to come back to a state that you were previously in after some sort of negative circumstance or circumstance that takes you from that. And the reason I think it's so important to look at it that way, Kristen, is, take you for example. Okay, just going to use you because you're literally the person I'm staring at, right? You're very disciplined. I know that about you, and I appreciate that about you. It's one of the things that we connected over. And there are some places that I'm disciplined. There's other places that I am not disciplined. But one of the things is that one of the challenges that discipline can bring is when you're so disciplined that you get caught in this rut, albeit a positive rut, right, of things that are benefiting our lives. The challenges become, as soon as you get out of that rut, things completely fall apart, right? And I'm not suggesting that's what's going to happen to you, but if discipline is the only thing we focus on, I'm the person that works out every single day. The challenge becomes is the day that you don't work out, now you're just off, right? Everything is falling apart. And I see this so much with high achievers. They think it's either all or nothing, right? They're somebody who worked out all the time when they were in high school, and they prided themselves on that. And now they're 47 with a big old, paunchy gut. And they're like, well, back in my day, anytime I hear back in my day, it scares the living crap out of me, right? Because we're focusing on things that are no longer relevant. It doesn't matter to me what you used to do. Who are you today? That doesn't mean you have to be as fit as you were when you're in high school, but who is it that you are, and how do you identify? So this idea of resiliency, which is, can I come back to the state that I was in, not the exact state, but to the state that I want to be in after something that's challenging? Because again, if you get super disciplined and you get into this rut, let's say, you want to start a family. Well, having kids will change the trajectory of your life. There's no question about it. And nobody can explain it to anybody without kids until they actually have kids. It's the same as trying to explain to somebody that a fire will burn you, right? Like, I can tell you till I'm blue in the face, but until you do it, it doesn't matter. And so that resiliency piece comes into play because life is going to hammer you with things, right? New circumstances, sometimes travesties and suffering. And it's not the person that can avoid, if you avoid suffering and change, you will get, it's very maladaptive, right? You will suffer and you will get worse and you will get less resilience if you avoid it, right? That same tree, they've done studies, trees that are not subjected to the wind get uprooted like that, right? Because they haven't built the resiliency. There's nothing that has caused them to have to get better. So it's not avoiding all of those things. It's being able to come back to where you want to be after those things have occurred. So family, travesty, suffering, whatever it happens to be. And so when I think of, to the anonymous person, when I think of this idea of coming back to discipline, it's really a matter of resiliency. It's allowing yourself to understand that things will occur. And can I get back to that habit in some way? So I think that that's a piece of it, is building your resiliency, which is your ability to come back to something after you've been pulled off in some way. And again, it's looking at it in terms of all of those different 8 areas. That's another thing I love about that, is when something's not going well in my financial life, I can look at all the other areas of my life and say, things are still going well. I'm still challenging myself in these other areas and I'm still growing. I can also do that here. It's not an avoidance, but it's a recognition that those things are happening. So that's a big piece of this that I think is important. The other piece is to recognize that it may not be like it used to be. A lot of high achievers get stuck in this thing. They're like, well, I used to be able to run a 6-minute mile and lift this much stuff and do all these things. So if I can't do that, it's not worth doing. No. you have to recognize, this goes back to Ty's question, you have to recognize the act of doing it is the success. The outcome will come as a result, but it's the act of doing it. So if you work out, you are disciplined. Not if you are fit, you are disciplined. If you work out, it's the action that makes you a disciplined person. And as soon as you act, that one day you are being in a state of discipline. Now things will change, and when it does, if you can pull yourself back to it, you are still a disciplined person who has been resilient and has gone through some period of your life where things got challenged, but being able to pull yourself back. So I think it's that level of resiliency that I think is important. And the way that you practice that is by coming back to things, right? Like coming back to working out even when you haven't done it for a while. In our social wellness, so in relationships, the biggest way to develop resiliency is to apologize, right? Like that's it, because the challenge of social interaction, like, so I think physically, the challenge of physical health is exercise, right? I exercise, therefore I get stronger. The challenge of social interaction is vulnerability and trust. And those two things happen when something goes wrong. You admit that you're wrong, you say you're sorry, and you act to show that person that you actually believe that and you have their best interests at heart. So connecting and apologizing in a social setting is the way that you build resiliency in your relationships. And then obviously doing all the fun stuff that you want to do, having a communication, being there for that person, doing something that benefits them without it necessarily benefiting you. That's also how you build stronger bonds. But resiliency is that thing that we're talking about here, and that ability to come back to a state. So in a relationship, something goes wrong. Do I have does our relationship have the resiliency to come back to where it was? And usually apologizing and doing something for the benefit of somebody else will build that resiliency and help that relationship come back to where it was. And it's through that act. So to the anonymous person, build resiliency and then take action, because action is where discipline is not a trait, it's not a character, it's an action. And if you're acting, then you're disciplined. And then when you fall off, build that resiliency. And the resiliency is simply coming back. Another great practice for coming back and learning that is mindfulness practices. Everybody thinks that meditation is the act of having no thoughts. Then that couldn't be further from the truth. Meditation and mindfulness is having a thought, recognizing you're having a thought, and coming back to the present moment. In fact, the worse you are at meditation, the better the practice is, because it's more repetitions of coming back. And so mindfulness and meditation are the resiliency practice for your mental health, right? So there are 3 examples right there of resiliency in the different areas of your life, is coming back to the state that you want to be in.
I think a word that also describes that is flexibility, because you might not, like you said, be back to a 6-minute mile, but being flexible with your approach and how you get there. And if you do fall down one day, get back up the next. Like the point is to show up as many times as you can when you can. And then over time, that discipline becomes a habit.
Yeah, absolutely. Flexibility allows you to go farther away from that central point that you're used to, and then coming back to it, right? So flexibility is a component of resiliency. They can be separate, in my opinion, but they are very, very strongly tied together, because the more flexible you are, just like the tree, the farther you can bend and still be able to come back, right? Mm-hmm. And so if you're not flexible and you go too far, you break. Now in a human situation, especially because we're really talking about mental flexibility and resiliency, there is a breaking, but I don't really believe there's any level of breaking where you can't come back. You just have to be willing to again put the work in to get back to where you want to be, as opposed to like a physical flexibility where it's, if the tree breaks, it breaks. There's no coming back situation. So,
so good. I love that analogy. That's really good.
Yeah.
Question from Ben. Ben has spent years trying to maintain and build good exercise habits. And his question is, what is your definition of being in shape? Is it being able to perform at a high level? Is it looking good physically? Combination of both. Everyone wants to be in shape, but no one states what that means for them.
Ben, you hit the nail on the head, buddy. You could do my job. So, one of the biggest things that got me into doing this work, you and I both know that my original background is in health and wellness, right? I ran a health club. I was in commercial wellness, corporate wellness. I had a fitness facility myself, master's in kinesiology, the whole 9 yards. And one of the things I recognized was, and I worked with sports performance athletes, right? D1 athletes, D3, basketball, baseball, youth, high school, the whole 9 yards. And people would ask me questions about, like, oh, who's gonna win the Super Bowl? And I'd be like, who's in the Super Bowl? Because I didn't care. Because sports weren't my thing. Human performance was my thing. Watching a bunch of men that I had never met before in my life play a game is not interesting to me. What is interesting to me is seeing my buddy Rob, who was playing, professionally at a collegiate level, do his thing and do it really, really well. And so I loved helping people to increase their capacity to do that thing. But one of the things I was finding was, for a lot of people, they didn't know why they wanted to work out. So to Ben's point, everybody wants to lose weight, get in shape, lose weight, get in shape, lose weight, get in shape. I tell people rounds of shape. Okay. So like what does in shape mean to you? You have to ask yourself that. And so what I was finding was, until people knew what they wanted to accomplish with their physical health, and to even clarify this, because a lot of people don't even realize what that means. Physical health is what you're made of, point blank into discussion. What are the chemical compounds? What's the manifestation of those chemical compounds turn into in terms of your hormones, your bones, your muscles, the water that's in you, the nervous tissue that you're made up of, your skin cells. Like, it's just the physical aspect of what you are. That's very separate from the mental part. They're intertwined, but those are two different things, right? And a lot of times we're not struggling with our physical health. We're struggling with the mental constructs that we put around our physical health. What does the extra layer of adipose tissue around my midsection say about me as a person? If you don't even know what that means, then you are worrying way too much about your body and what it looks like, right? And so that's the problem that a lot of people have, is that they don't really know what they want to do with their physical health. They don't, because, to be honest, take a bigger picture, and this is why I got into what I do, they don't know what they want to do with their life. So when we can answer the questions, what is the purpose of my life? What are the values that I live by in order to fulfill that purpose? Then the answer becomes a lot clearer. Right? I have a business person who I worked with for a number of months who wanted to get back in shape. Same conversation, right? But he works in banking. And so until we knew what that meant, his only definition of in shape was back in his football days. Well, I'm sorry, but you're not running into 300-pound dudes anymore at the fastest speed possible. That's just not your job anymore, right? What is your job? Your job is to develop the people on your team. Your job is to have the energy to work for 10 hours a day and then go home and have a meaningful conversation and maybe go on a walk with your wife. Your job is to be able to have a hormonal imbalance so that you don't flip out when somebody pulls in front of you at a traffic light and then rear end them and then get on the headline news as the guy who went on a rage spree, right? Like, that's your job. Okay. That's what you want to do with your life, right? Because your goal is to help foster the ability in other people to build deeper, meaningful relationships. And he does that in a bank. He does that in his family. He does that in the community that he serves. Okay, what do you need to be made of in order to do that? Do you need six-pack abs? No. And trust me when I say those things are really hard to get, and they're not that cool. No offense, Kristen. I know your job, Kristen, is to get on a stage and to look the part, right? Like, that's your job in your head based off of the thing that's really important to you. And so for you, six-pack abs are really cool. Don't get me wrong. But you can attest they're really hard to get and to keep.
And some, like, not even possible. So
Correct,
a lot of genetics.
Right? Genetically, yeah, exactly. And so, and ultimately, this is the fun part that I like to talk to people. Ultimately, do you know what 6-pack abs do? They do this. They help you hunch over. Like that's all they're functional for. But we've made up all these stories in our head about what it means when I have 6-pack abs and blah blah blah. No. What is my purpose in life? What are the values that I live by? And what do I need to be made of in order to fulfill that? Now, good health is going to extend your life. It's going to give you more energy. It's going to make you happier. All of those things happen. That's why I work out. I play pickleball because I love to play pickleball. I do challenging things because it tells me that I'm capable, and it allows me to speak to somebody else, so that when they say, I don't know, like drinking 64 ounces of water, that's a lot of work, and then I have to stand up to go pee, I can go, dude, I did a 5.5-hour Spartan race in August at an ATV park with a 3rd-degree sprain in my ankle. You can drink some more water. By the way, that's a true story, and I'm not bragging. That's just why I do what I do, so that I can tell other people, if I can do that, you can do this. And so again, you have to know why you're doing the things that you're doing, so that it gives you the motivation. Because now I talk to that banker and I go, hey, did you work out? Yeah, of course he did. He's back on track. He's back to doing a regular workout. Why? Because he knows why he's showing up. Because it's going to suck, but he has a good reason. And that goes back to why one of the themes that I see in high achievers, back to Michael's question, what I see is they know why they're doing what they're doing, and it's usually in the service of others. And that's why they're willing to go through hard things, because they're doing it for somebody else. And so when you know that, you get really motivated really, really quickly. And to be frank, I got sick of hearing people say, I want to lose weight and get in shape, and then they'd leave 3 months later because they had no reason to be there other than society telling them that they ought to be in shape. So, Ben, to your question, buddy, I couldn't agree more. I don't even think it was a question. It was just people need to know why they do what they do, so that they know why they're working out and getting in shape. So, Ben, I challenge you, buddy, hop on LinkedIn or hop on Instagram and post something about why you work out, because I want to hear what motivates you so much to work out. So
Awesome. Makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so easy to think it's getting in shape for external reasons, but it should really just, what your in shape is what do you value? What do you want to be able to do? Yeah.
Yeah. And I won't go off on a tangent, but one other thing, young people, right? I get it. You want to get in shape because you're looking for a mate. Let's just put it out there, right? Like, you want to look attractive so that other people are attractive to you, right? That's fine. No question. But here's the challenge. You work out a bunch to attract somebody else, not because you want to, not for the confidence that it puts in yourself, but for somebody else. As soon as you get done finding that mate, are you guys now aligned on a value that you actually don't care about? Right? That's one of the biggest things I see in challenges in people who are looking for a relationship, is they don't know their values, and the other person doesn't know theirs. So they get attracted based on interests and hobbies that are fleeting. So I just work out just so I can attract a mate. As soon as I'm done attracting a mate, I'm done working out. Okay, well, now you've just connected with somebody based off of a hobby that you did just to get the person. So now it's built on a sand castle of lies, which is a very dramatic way to say it. But those are some things to consider, like work out because you have the confidence in yourself to want to be healthy, because you know that the healthiness is the right thing, or like find your soulmate in the gym, because that is a value that you guys align with, right? People who meet their spouses in the gym or at church are much more likely to stay together than when they meet their spouse at a party or at a bar.
Yeah. Another question from Ben. He's wondering why people are so infatuated with being someone they're not. How did we get so insecure?
I love that, Ben. So I'm going to take the judgment away from that a little bit, because ultimately the reason we're so infatuated, and I don't know if Ben is being judgmental or not, that's not really the question, but people can take it that way. So I'm going to answer the question based off of my background in biology. People are infatuated with how other people perceive them physically, because we are a species built on societal pressure. If you can't attract a mate, you'll die. If you can't contribute meaningfully to the village, to the community, you'll die. If you can't impress other people, you'll die. And so we are wired to want to impress other people and to want to or to compare ourselves to other people, because comparison is also the like, oh, if they have that, then I can't have it, and if they're doing this, then I need to be able to do that, because if I can't keep up, I'll get kicked out. And so we're wired to do this. So it's nobody, in my opinion, it's nobody's fault that our species is the way that it is. But again, it doesn't matter what whose fault it is. What matters is what you do about it. And I'd say the reason Ben is saying that question, and maybe because he's secure with who he is, or he's very not, and he's trying to figure out why. But that very question implies the very challenge, which is, if you're doing all these things to impress other people, you are putting your validation as a human into the hands of other people. Because if people don't notice your new hairdo, or they don't notice your breast implants, or they don't notice your liposuction, it's going to completely destroy you. And here's the other thing, like the liposuction isn't going to change the habits that got you to a place where you needed the liposuction. And so you're going to go right back. So many cosmetic surgeries go, like, unless they're just augmentations of like the nose or something, but like liposuction, things like that, tummy tucks, a lot of them, they go right back to where they were because they didn't change the habits, right? So the flat stomach, the reason that's so desirable to people is because it represents, to our point before, discipline and the ability to take care of yourself. You know what's funny, Kristen?
Health.
It represents health, right? But what's funny is that several hundred years ago, somebody who was somewhat obese, right, or overweight, was considered extremely attractive in societal norms. Do you know why?
Yeah, because it means that they had more access to resources.
Correct.
It's a similar thing. There's like recent studies of like when I think America, when the U.S. is in a recession, um, heavier women or larger women are more attractive to men versus when we're doing well, the economy's doing well. Yeah,
Yep.
thinner women are more attractive. Crazy.
It's all a matter of a representation of abundance of resources. That's really all it boils down to, right? That's why people who are on welfare living in trailers will buy a Hummer, right? And then you look at them and you go, what kind of idiot, blah, blah, blah. And it's because they are utilizing the resources they have to appear like they have more resources, because maybe, just maybe, then society will like them.
Hmm.
And so they're over emphasizing the external validation, right? And all a Hummer is breast implants for a woman, right? Like it's just a matter of, again, it's just using our external validation to try to get people to like us. And there's nothing wrong with wanting people to like you. There's nothing wrong with that. We need more of that in our lives. But the challenge is people they're going to like you for a second, maybe. They may more than likely just be jealous of who you are. Like, look at this person. Oh, they can afford cosmetic surgery. Must be nice, right? What's going to get people to like you is when you serve them, when you offer value, when you share, when you give a compliment. We need to spend more time giving of ourselves instead of waiting for other people to share to validate. That's why one of the things I do in my classes, and my class is entrepreneurship. It is not in any way, shape, or form related to mental health or social wellness or any of that stuff. But one of the things we do is we practice gratitude. So the first thing I have them do is I say, hey guys, one of the things that's really important in life is to know that we have people that support us and love us. So I want you to take a second. I just want you to think about somebody who you love. And I want you to think about why you're grateful for them. Could be small, could be big, could be somebody you were born out of, which is a typical one, right? Our moms. Or it could be somebody who you just met 3 weeks ago. I just want you to think why you're grateful for them. Then we take it a step further and I say, pull out your phones. I can't tell them what to do with their phones. So I just say, either follow along or pretend to, be typing and play Candy Crush or something, but send a text to that person. Hey, we were talking about people we're grateful for today. And I just wanted to say, you're one of them. Right? And so trust me when I said, for one, I wait for a couple minutes because the smiles that get on people's faces, because they got a text back that was either something silly, like, dude, I'm still sleeping, leave me alone, bro. Or, hey, that's really like, but the connection that we made, and that's actually a practice from positive psychology, where they had them write letters, and then they literally took the letters to their house and read them to the person they were grateful for. And the happiness increase that the people that wrote the letters got was increased for 6 months after that. Not the person that read the letter, that got the letter, the person that read it to them, that wrote it and read it. So if we want to connect more meaningfully with people, if we want people to like us, we have to start to give of ourselves, not try to impress them with things or stuff or whatever. And we have to be able to give. And that's why I love servant-hearted individuals, because those are the people who are going to get this and be happier. And so whether it's a relationship at work where you can give a little bit of yourself, not be taken advantage of, but give in a way that makes sense and is meaningful, relationships at home with your spouse or your intended partner, or just relationships with friends or the community, like spend more time doing that. And then back to Ty's point, chalk that up as a win. Did you help somebody else today? Right. So those are my input. So to Ben's question, it's nobody's fault, because that's how we're wired. The question becomes can we shift the messaging? Can we shift what it means to impress people? And my opinion is yes, if we serve them.
And stop comparing.
Absolutely. Yeah. Or if you're going to compare the right way, right? And even then, like, you can compare by saying like, well, they may have really nice stuff, but I'm spending my life doing things that I love for the people that I love. Right. So compare as little as possible. If you compare, do that. And when you compare, no judgment. Right. It's not I'm better than them because I serve more people. It's I'm happy with who I am because I serve more people. No matter what, the comparison piece is irrelevant.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, we're getting short on time. We have a few more questions that we'll probably get to next week about staying positive during adversity and building a great culture in startups and whatever else people want to ask.
I love it. Let's go ahead and throw one of the questions out there so that we can give people a cliffhanger for next week.
Yeah.
Or 2 weeks.
We have a question from Nate about when it comes to culture, what are some basic principles to build upon, and how do you encourage people to embrace them, and how do you right the ship if course correction is needed?
I love that. Culture is one of my biggest things, right? Because culture is the social piece in all this, but it's at work, right? I'm sorry, relationships are relationships. It's funny how people get so caught up on networking these days. Like, oh, I need to improve my networking, blah, blah, blah. Networking is relationships. Just like branding, personal brands, that's your reputation. None of this is new, guys. It's just a matter of how do you want to sell it? How do you want to word it? And then do you want to add AI to it, right? So the real question just becomes, just like anything else, how do we form relationships at the workplace so that the right people are on board, we understand what we're trying to accomplish, and we can do so together synergistically, which means we can do it better as a group than not. And so I'm very excited to answer that question about how do you develop culture and then right the ship, because that is vital. It's more vital than ever before, especially with like remote work. How do you build a culture when nobody ever meets each other? Because a culture is basically two things, rituals and an understanding of values, right? So when our rituals are unique, like workplace rituals, it becomes really hard to make culture work. So yeah, very excited to have that conversation. So Kristen, thanks for the phenomenal facilitation of those questions. Love it. Thank you to Nate coming up next week, Michael, Ty, Ben, Anonymous. Did I hit everybody?
Yes.
Yes, you guys are phenomenal. Thank you so much for the opportunity to help you. If you have questions that you want to ask, please shoot it to us on LinkedIn at Coach Lucas Woody or at The Next Better, which is the company. You can also shoot it at Instagram, which is also at Coach Lucas Woody. You can also throw it out to Kristen. Kristen, where would they reach out to you for great questions?
kwrinkle2003 at gmail.com.
There we
or
go.
LinkedIn.
I love it. Yeah, LinkedIn or kwrinkle2003 at gmail.com. So either way, get those questions to us. We'd be happy to answer it every 2 weeks. So not next week, but the week after, the second and the fourth Wednesday at 11:30. Grab some food or some coffee or a pillow and some tissues. I don't know what you need to go through this process, but I'm going to do it with you. My name is Coach Woody. And until next time, make it a great day.